What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So with Nintendo's big release recently, it looks like we may have another hint towards the Switch 2, specifically for backwards compatibility and maybe some of the upgrades that we can expect, but we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft, as it appears they may have let slip some of their next generation plans through way of a blog post that has the entire internet talking about Steam, but on an Xbox. Then we also have Sony with another crazy idea for a future controller, which might change the way we look at actually charging up any of our different accessories. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with actually a really cool announcement yesterday that I was not at all expecting, because it's been 21 years since, well, the last one came out technically, and that's Painkiller. You can see the full trailer here, and they actually have a description that they sent out as well in a press release, where it says, Painkiller is a reimagining of the classic franchise featuring cooperative play for up to 3 players and full offline support. It's not usually see that nowadays, right? Battle hordes of demons and titanic terrors across richly detailed Gothic environments. They're looking to have this out and released later on this year in 2025 for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. So that is, again, that's awesome, because I was not at all thinking, oh yeah, Painkiller, where's that franchise? I've kind of forgotten about that, but that's because it was like mid-2000s it came out on PC, and then it did go to the original Xbox. So we had that on like one platform, then now, of course, going to all the different platforms that it can at this point. But what a really cool resurgence, I guess, or them just reviving this franchise. The thing is, though, people are going to look at it and be like, oh, it looks very similar to Doom, and I mean, yeah, that's kind of just like the lane that it falls into, but maybe with the cooperative play, it can set itself apart a bit. I'm interested, because while I haven't played the first Painkiller in what feels like forever, I mean, decades at this point, I do remember it somewhat. So I'm interested enough to maybe look into it as we get closer to release, see what else they have. Also, we did have an announcement for Nintendo Switch Online with more Super Nintendo games going in. We can see this posted up over on Nintendo's official account. They say, prepare yourself. The following Super Nintendo titles are marching towards release for Nintendo Switch Online members on March 28th. So we'll see that next week. Nobunaga's Ambition, then Nobunaga's Ambition Lord of Darkness, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 4 Wall of Fire, and then Uncharted Water New Horizons. So looking up and down the list here, I gotta say, I don't have any nostalgia for any of these 4 titles. Now, I'm sure there's some people out there that saw this list and were like really excited. It's just not really, my month here, we'll say, for Super Nintendo games, but technically 4 different titles going into the service, just continue to build out that library. But I am interested to see if there's anyone out there who remembers like Nobunaga's Ambition, because I definitely remember seeing that or Romance of the Three Kingdoms up on the shelf, and it was always there. Like, I don't remember anyone really buying it much, so I'm interested how popular these games were, really. So let me know down in the comments section if you do remember maybe renting or even owning any of these different titles back in the day. Oh, and we have some big news for not only Nintendo, but also the Seattle Mariners. This was actually posted up on their official account, where they say, our jerseys are leveling up. We are excited to expand our long-standing relationship with Nintendo of America, with jerseys featuring Nintendo at home and Nintendo Switch 2 on the road. So, okay, Nintendo patch there on the road. The Switch patch right there, Switch 2, Switch patch on the road. This might be the moment to go all in on the Mariners for the World Series this year. Because winning games at home is, typically you're more likely to win games at home than on the road. It's hard to win on the road in baseball. But I don't know how you beat the Mariners if their entire lineup is comprised of Switch hitters. You got to start your morning with that, so you're welcome. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and their Switch 2 and what people are now looking at as maybe an upgrade path for some of the recent releases, and then maybe even other Switch-related releases from a while ago that could see their own updates. And that has to do with maybe doubling, or in some cases, tripling the frame rate, say to 60 FPS. Well, this was noticed with Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which is out now. I did pick up a physical copy of this. I did like a quick unboxing YouTube short, so that is up on the channel. If you just want to see the box art itself, inside, of course, with the reverse cover art, the little pamphlet, the cartridge, all of that. It's Xenoblade Chronicles X. It completes like the entirety of the Xenoblade franchise on one system, which is impressive on its own. So of course I had to get the physical copy and just complete that entire series there in my library. But we can see this posted up. Now this is over on Nintendo Life, as well as linking to a person over on X who appears to be a modder kind of looking through some of the code for Xenoblade Chronicles X. Remember, this game did leak out early, and when that happens, of course, people have dumped the ROM and can then start looking through the code and stuff. In this case, Massagrator says that the dynamic resolution ranges from 504p to 720p in handheld mode, 760p to 1080p docked, which I will say in a very brief time, I've played it for an hour and a half so far, and handheld mode looks good. I mean, just in general, it looks better than what we've dealt with previous Xenoblade games, and I think back to like Chronicles 2 probably being the low point in general. It was rough in handheld mode. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 got better. This, to me, so far looks the cleanest out of all the different Xenoblade games on the Switch. In docked mode, it does actually look quite a bit better, like in general. So I think the art style also like lends to this, but those resolution ranges, that seems about right there, where it's not dropping horrendously low into like 300 some odd P territory. Now the game's executable has a hidden 60 FPS mode. It seems to be implemented only partially, since enabling it causes weird issues, as a proof screen from function that sets UI speed 1.0.1. So this is interesting because obviously people are looking at this going, hold on a minute, we're pretty close to the Switch 2. This actually would be a pretty cool game to have with Switch 2 compatibility, as we're expecting it to just drop in, but also maybe unlock a hidden upgrade or feature like 60 FPS, because again, it looks pretty good. It is sitting at 30 FPS. Not a huge deal for an RPG like this, but it's still noticeable. It would be nice to be 60 FPS. Now, as mentioned, it seems like it is tied to something in the game that would make it run kind of weird. Someone did ask, oh, animation's tied to frame rate. They replied, gameplay is rendered every second frame. So even though it outputs 60 FPS, you get in fact 30 usable frames. Cutscenes sometimes are working fine. Sometimes some objects are jittering, like hard-coded to be 30 FPS. Sometimes it's again every second frame rendered. Now I will say it's possible that Monolith Soft was just playing around with the idea of maybe moving it up to 60 FPS, and it just wasn't quite working out for them with the time they had allotted, or maybe it just wasn't something that was even possible with them coming from the Wii U, and how, as they were mentioning, kind of hard-coded maybe with things like animations, and just having some weird issues that would, of course, lower the overall quality of the release, and they're trying to at least keep that within range that Nintendo would expect from them technically. I mean, we look at them as technical wizards, but even they could have maybe said, oh yeah, it's 60, and then all kinds of madness breaks out when you're playing that game. So it's very possible it could have been an experimental thing that they decided just to disable, and it's kind of still there in the code, so maybe modders in general will play around with it. I'm sure some have already been working to overclock the system and do other parts to it, but it would be very, very interesting if there was maybe an update that was going to get pushed out for the Switch 2 for something like Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, maybe any other games that are stuck right now at 30 FPS. And games like an Astral Chain, just as an example. If that was moved to 60 FPS, it would just be a better game overall, especially because it is, of course, more of an action game compared to what we have here with Xenoblade Chronicles X. And I'm sure there are many examples a lot of you can think of, and you can leave it down in the comments for what game you would like to see have at least a decent upgrade with the Switch 2, as we know, or at least believe, that the vast majority of the games are going to work right away, physical or not, digitally as well, attached to your account, and maybe we'll have a handful of them just get some updates right away day one. That could be really cool, and I'm sure would have many people going in not only into their library of games, but maybe also continuing to buy those evergreen titles, and in fact, they can even see a bit of a surge in terms of sales when the Switch 2 comes out. Yeah, Switch 1 games seeing an increase in sales because of the Switch 2, not necessarily just all Switch 2 titles. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft, who may have accidentally given us a bit of a glimpse into their next generation plans for just their overall ecosystem. Not necessarily just Xbox, but Windows, gaming, pretty much everything. And all of this comes down to one single image that was dropped on their blog. And it was actually spotted by The Verge, and we can see that image here. And this coming from The Verge's article they wrote up next to it, where they say, in a blog post about Xbox opening 1 billion doors, Microsoft briefly revealed a new Xbox UI that looks a lot more console-like across multiple devices, and even appears to list Steam games. After briefly posting an image of a new Xbox UI across multiple devices, Microsoft quickly removed it once The Verge inquired about it. The image has a new Xbox UI that can be seen on a TV, where you can clearly see the Steam label listed. The same UI with the Steam mention is also shown on the tablet and handheld version. So really, because I feel like because we have the Xbox there next to that UI, it's kind of what we're expecting then to maybe be on either an update or what I think anyway, their next generation device. Now, here's the interesting thing about all of this, right? So we've talked about the idea of just Steam being on their next system. I mean, who's to say they couldn't do some massive update to the Xbox console now and set it up with a version of Windows, and then could Steam technically work there? I mean, really, if you look at the Xbox Series X now and even the Xbox Series S, it's x86, it's not off shelf. Obviously, they have worked with AMD, but much more compatible now versus, say, the Xbox 360 when it comes to like Windows. So in that instance, I do wonder if that's something that can also go back retroactively, update the Xbox Series X, and all of a sudden it runs a form of Windows that would allow you to buy things off of Steam, or even just install certain Steam games that are compatible, and then the next generation offering would just be Steam right out of the box, alongside of like Microsoft Store, and it would just sort of be this Windows UI, this environment kind of that they're setting up here, that would also work on handhelds, even from OEM partners like Asus, or maybe even just a PC itself. If you want to build it, it's a mode you can set up on Windows and it looks like a console right away. And I wouldn't put it past Microsoft if this was just something that happened by accident, because, I mean, look at how they've operated in the background. It's kind of been like, hey, they'll say something and then like 4 months later change their mind. It seems like it's kind of back and forth behind the scenes as it is. Wouldn't surprise me if they were like, oh yeah, we're opening to billions of people. Okay, we're going to do that new UI. Let's do the mock-up real quick, like for an artist rendering and stuff of it. Oh, there it is. But they didn't necessarily hear that they weren't supposed to post that. So wouldn't surprise me if that ended up being just like a mistake, and what we really saw were maybe some of their plans for next generation. And that, of course, coming down to the ecosystem, the software, and then the hardware, which, hey, maybe when we see this Asus Xbox handheld later on this year, that's something that pops up where we have the Windows Store and also a little Steam tab there that does work well with the Xbox button being right next to it on the system. Next up, let's talk about Sony, who is, of course, hard at work with all kinds of patents for their hardware and accessories, which does include their controller, specifically right now their DualSense controller, as is shown in several of the patent images. But it seems like they're trying to figure out other ways to charge the controller, and, well, let's take a look. This is posted up, we can see, and this is over on Tech for Gamers. It says Sony's patent Operation Device describes a PlayStation controller that includes photovoltaic elements, which are the basic units of solar cells. These solar cells have the basic yet crucial functionality of generating electricity and storing it in a battery for future use. The conglomerate argues that traditional game controllers end up with their batteries drained at the wrong times when you don't have a charger on hand, and their batteries also need to be replaced eventually. So the solar panel controllers can resolve these dilemmas. So, okay, in some of the images they show like maybe using some of that around like the edges of the DualSense on the face of it where you would be holding on to it, which it's technically not going to necessarily charge when you're holding it then if you're relying on sunlight hitting it. I guess you'd also need to be near like a window kind of, and it wouldn't charge at night. It seems like there's a lot of asterisks that would go alongside of it, which is probably why right now it's a patent. This would be something them just playing around with in R&D. Although I will say, I have a Samsung TV in the living room, and the remote on the other side, on like the back side of it, definitely has like a receptor for like light for charging the remote through solar power. And let me know if you have a similar remote for Samsung. I was a little surprised at that, but I also haven't had to plug it in to charge. It has USB-C, and I sometimes just leave it upside down, like on the couch there's windows in the living room, and I've never really had to charge it for like a year and a half now. So maybe that's something that's already kind of ongoing, and this would be the idea of playing around with it for a controller. Although most of us, when we have a controller, sure, you may take it with you to a tournament or a friend's house. Usually there's like a charger on hand. I'm sure some people have run into the situation where you can't charge your controller, but typically your response isn't just, okay, I'm going to run outside and hold this up to the sun. We're gamers. You want us to go outside now? No, they usually would just drop it in a cradle or just plug it in through USB-C and then to the system itself. It just seems like maybe something they would try to bake into a controller as like a nice to have, not really though a need to have, especially if it does kick the price up like I would expect. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows, as we did have an update around sales, kind of. Again, the wording here is the important part, which we've discussed previously with things like Dragon Age the Veilguard, how EA attempted to dress that up a bit, but then also threw it under the bus completely. In this case, though, Ubisoft seems pretty excited about sort of a milestone they've reached in less than 24 hours, which we can see here. This is over on their official account saying it's not even 4 p.m. here in Canada, and Assassin's Creed Shadows has already passed 1 million players. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining this adventure in feudal Japan. We are beyond excited to start this journey with you. So obviously the important part here, 1 million players. They didn't say it sold 1 million copies, and that's important because there are other ways, of course, you can access this game. Some, I'm sure, got it with the purchase of a video card. Is that enough necessarily to move the needle? Probably not. No, I think the thing that would move the needle and make them say players instead of copies sold would be through their Ubisoft Plus, their subscription service that does allow you to play like a new release like this for, I think it's less than $20 a month. But still, they want people to also sign up to their subscription service while they're selling copies of the game elsewhere. And it's also important to note, while I do see Steam, like SteamDB, like concurrent player counts getting thrown around a lot right now online, I think that's, while it's obviously a big avenue for Ubisoft, I think this is going to be heavily skewed towards consoles, but also that Ubisoft store, believe it or not, seem to do pretty well in terms of sales for Valhalla. So I wouldn't be shocked if people are even just buying it there. Basically what I'm saying is, I think the Steam DB numbers could be a bit of a smokescreen for people who are heavily relying on that as to give us the overall sales of this, or at least trying to predict it. I'd wait, I'd hang out a little bit, see if they all of a sudden give us another update. Oh, 2 million players, 3 million players, maybe a week or so from now. Then there'd be bit more than I would expect. So for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Insider Gaming reported back in February that some of the numbers they received from some of the anonymous sources, we'll say, or insiders at Ubisoft, was that Odyssey in its first day had 450,000 players. This is more than double that immediately. Actually faster than that even. So we'll have to see, especially after its first weekend, how it ends up doing. And then, of course, in its first week, as Valhalla was right around 1.7 million copies sold. I'm more curious if they give us a sales number rather than just players. So I guess we'll keep an eye out over the next 6 or so days to see if they have another update. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if Steam is available on the next-gen Xbox and your library carried over, would you be more interested? Oh, 74% say that they would at least be more interested. 26% say no. I didn't say would you buy one because we don't necessarily know the models they're going to release, the cost of it. There's still a lot of questions. But I was just curious if Steam would move the needle of at least interest for some people. And I'm sure there are many PC gamers right now who have not at all been interested in consoles. Like at all. Like, I don't want to buy a console. But then Microsoft shows up with what is, kind of effectively, a Windows PC in a little console-sized box that can access your Steam library. There might be some interest there. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool, especially if it shows up and it's $500 or $600, which in PC land, that's dirt cheap. Let's be real. So if that's the case, and it's kind of just, oh, I can get this for the living room. The PCs now you can do that, but it's just not set up great currently. But who knows? Maybe the OS also gets a refinement to where it is worth then building your own PC, loading this console OS on it from Microsoft with Windows, and you're off and running. But there may be some who are like, oh, cool, I can just buy this, drop it underneath the TV in the living room for casual play, we'll say like that, other than, oh, I'm at my PC and I'm trying to get Counter-Strike at 500 frames per second because it's serious business right now. Maybe you just want to kick back and play a third-person action-adventure game with a controller that it's more geared towards. I just think that would be a good direction for Microsoft and might be able to capture an audience that they've been still keeping close to them because of just Windows in general. Steam definitely just slaps around the Windows Store, which is crazy because the Windows Store comes loaded on Windows right out of the gate. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Tom, who says, I just love how everything that happens in the game industry is shocking, controversial, colossal, or massive. You know what? I think this is a good point by Tom, actually. And I think what we need to do is we need to take a look at the thesaurus here. We go over Merriam-Webster because I think you're right. I think this is good advice to try to play around with some of the words. I will look at them and it's just like, okay, how do you make the headline at least interesting and stuff? But let's see what we have here. Let's see, what can we change shocking to? So, startling, surprising, amazing, stunning, astonishing. I feel like I've seen a lot of those. Let's see, all the way at the bottom. Heart stopping. That might get me in trouble with YouTube if I put heart stopping in the title. Impressive, eye-opening, remarkable, upsetting, blindsiding. I like that one. Okay, you know what, Tom? This one's for you. Changing shocking to blindsiding right now in the title for yesterday's video. Go take a look. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see how the 3DS continues to just get better and better, especially in 2025, where Homebrew has basically revived the eShop in a way after Nintendo left it all behind. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.